Hello, my name is Troy Westmoreland. I'm a student here in Introduction to Psychology, and today I'm going to be presenting on cognitive development. What we're going to be going over specifically about cognitive development is Jean Piaget's view, his different stages: the sensory motor, the stage, the pre-operational stage, the concrete operations stage, and formal operations stage. Jean Piaget himself he was born in 1896 and he lived to 1980. He was 84 years old. He was a Swiss psychologist. Apparently very, very important is according to his view of cognitive development. His whole view or outlook, his theory of cognitive development with his epistemological view, which is how he views learning, or his theory of knowledge is combined into the view genetic epistemology, and that is he believes that behavior was based on schema, and schema is how you relate to different objects or concepts or inputs, and he talks about his principles within that are assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation is where you apply an old schema or way that you interact to things to a new concept or object, and then accommodation is where you have to modify it, and then so that is where he gets the term equilibration, which means you apply an old schema and then it doesn't work, and so then you have to accommodate, and it's almost like a triangular view, or like a hypothesis versus the results, and then you get a synthesis, and then you keep going. His four major stages are the sensory motor stage, and that is from birth to 2 years old. The pre-operational stage, which is from about 1.5 to 7 years old. The concrete operations 7 to 11, and then formal operations 11 years old and onward. Just to begin with the sensory motor stage, that like is 1.5 to first 1.5 to 2 years of age, from birth to then. The theory is that infants only react with what they are seeing in real time. They can only process so things that they don't see. They don't necessarily remember that they even exist. It comes from the term, there's sensory input, and so there's a motor output. It determines how they react. One test that kind of supports this is the screen test, which is where they show an object, the child, or a toy, like the child reaches for it. But then there is when the screen is placed in front of it, the child like almost forgets that it's there. He's not like, oh, what's behind it, reaching for the toy. He almost just there's no input there, so there's no output. There are some conflicting results, like the hidden object behind a race car track. Like they show a hidden object, then put a screen in front of it, then the car comes and passes through it, or like it passes through, they take the object away, and the infant shows signs of surprise, but it's kind of hard to quantify at that age. They take like staring longer means that they're surprised or they're trying to think about it, but it's conflicting results there, but it's also hard to measure and quantify. Sorry. Then we have the pre-operational stage, which is about 1.5 or 2 years of age to 7 years of age. The term pre-operational means lacking in operations. Is before the time of those operations, and that is necessarily reversible mental processes. So applying one concept, being able to reverse it, it comes. He uses the term egocentrism, and that doesn't necessarily mean selfish, but it means it's hard to adopt another person's perspective or point of view, or to see things maybe flipped around from another perspective. They use the experiment Lucy's Red Shoes, so they tell a story about Lucy's brother. Lucy wants her. They tell him that Lucy wants her old red shoes, but then her brother comes into the room and she says, "Go get my red shoes," and he brings her new red shoes. And some of the kids have a hard. Why would he bring the new red shoes when she wants her old red shoes? They don't quite understand that he is lacking that information. It's hard for them to adopt her brother's perspective. But then they also perform a different visual task differently. When you put some objects between the child and an adult, and then some of the objects are hidden and some of them are revealed. A child can somewhat determine if the adult can see the object or not, and we'll say, instead of they see two glasses, but the adult can only see one because one is blocked, and so they go, well, pick up the glass rather than pick up the smaller glass or larger glass. The it's outlined in the book. I'm having a hard time explaining that one, but they have a hard time distinguishing appearance from reality. So when there's a model room and the person hides a little object in the room and then tells the child to go search for it, they search, they wander around aimlessly, but then the experiment is repeated and the adult tells the child, hey, this room is the same, it's just a machine has blown it up to full size. And so when they hide the object, the child goes into the full size room, goes right to it. And so they kind of have a hard time, unless you help them along, distinguishing what the appearance of the room from the reality of the room. And also they have to struggle with the concept of conservation, like different same number of pennies in a row, but one is more spread out. They say the spread out row has more pennies, or a clay ball that's been smushed is smaller, it has less mass in it, or liquid being poured into a taller container, although it's the same amount of liquid, it appears to be more liquid there. Um, in the concrete operations stage is from 7 to 11 years of age. Concrete operations means that children handle concrete objects and concepts well, but still struggle with hypothetical or abstract concepts. When you ask them, how will we move a mountain of whipped cream, they're like, that's a silly question. Or where should I put a third eye on my body? Younger kids say, right where your other eyes are, right between your other eyes. And older kids will come up with an imaginative example, such as maybe an eye in my stomach to see the food that's in there, or an eye on my finger so I can peek around corners. That's an examples. All examples come from the book, but change is gradual. So while they might understand that the clay ball that is smushed has the same amount of size, they might think that it displaces less water in the jar, and so they still have a hard time transferring those some concepts to different tests or stimuli or scenarios. The formal operation stage is 11 years old onward, and it is formal means logical or deductive reasoning and systematic planning. Piaget says it's 11 on. Piaget says it's 11 on. Other researchers say it may happen later or not even at all. Right? Thinking in formal operations, it really necessitates or requires planning, and I don't know if everyone's always the best at planning out how to attack a problem or things like that. Some people never really develop that. They just plunge ahead. And the example in the book was mixing liquids, where you try to get these different clear liquids. You can mix them together to get a certain color, and then children will just plunge ahead, just try different ones. Whereas trying to develop a system of planning, where it's like, hey, I'm gonna try this one, then these combinations, and remember which ones I tried. Some people never develop that. They're just like, well, let's just try it. So it depends on which view you're taking. But in conclusion, Piaget claimed that the stages were distinct. That when you transition, it requires a revolutionary reorganization of your thought process that happens at different stages in life. Children often perform though based on difficulty. So when you take the pennies example, when you take less pennies, like say 3 pennies, and then 3 more pennies and spread them out, it's easier to tell. The children can say, oh, well, there's still 3 pennies. So the difficulty really determines their idea, their operational understanding. And the later research actually suggests more of a gradual progression. Vygotsky's zone of proximal development is where, like, you wouldn't take a 4-year-old and try and challenge them harder on a concept, but maybe a 6-year-old, you would start beginning to challenge their concepts and their operational abilities. And for my personal takeaways, I had a hard time choosing between cognitive development or social and emotional development. But I believe, like, as a future parent, like, I'm very, very convicted. Like, I want my kid to be ahead of the curve, or on the curve. I want to challenge them where they can be challenged, but also understand where they're at, and not overwhelm them or expect too much of them, but while also trying to, kind of like Vygotsky, like, I I agree with that. Like trying to, as they grow older, push the boundaries of what they know. I don't want to stunt my child's ability by expecting too less of them, or maybe traumatize is the right word, of expecting too much of them. Cognitive development really is something that can be intentionally fostered to grow and expand, and that's something that I want to do. I know this presentation was longer, but I really appreciate you bearing with me. Um, and thank you very much. Again, my name is Troy Westmoreland. I hope you have a blessed day.